There's a little saying that Bible scholars use, and really any historian or a playwright, anyone that sort of works with words, and that is that all meaning is context dependent. Meaning that what you might wear in one place, you wouldn't wear in another place. What you might say in one room means something different if you say it in another room. That the context is what shapes meaning. And like, for example, if you came into church wearing a bikini, that would be awkward. But if you were wearing a bikini on the beach, it seems entirely normal. And that's only because of where you are. All meaning is context dependent. As people are trying to move into life with Jesus, context is everything. The ability for them to be who they really are is usually very difficult for them to jump from their normal life into a Sunday experience. No matter how hard we try to make a Sunday welcoming and engaging for people, that we use words that people understand, we have coffee, the lighting is just so, and we don't embarrass them, and we try to make songs that actually make sense. No matter what we do there, that's still a huge jump. There aren't very many rooms that people go into where they sing to one wall or they listen to someone talk to them about God. It can be a really big jump for people, and those transitions frankly can be awkward for them in a way that they realize, I feel like I've done something wrong here. I showed up at church in a bikini. I didn't understand the rules here, or I'm afraid I won't understand the rules, no matter how comfortable you try to make it. And so last week talked to you about really trying to create context in your own life where people can belong to your friendship circles before they have to believe or behave. And this week I want you to realize that that's how we're trying to think about life in our church. That we're trying to think about different transitional environments that help people move towards life in Jesus without having to make all the steps at once. In other words, the first step for most people that don't have life with Jesus usually isn't a Sunday experience. That there's 7 steps in between, or 10 or 50 or 100, or maybe even only 3. There's some people that you'll meet that already have sort of a church context, and maybe they're even seeking out life with God. And so maybe a Sunday invitation makes sense, but most people are just trying to get through their life, and they need a number of steps. If you think about church programming and how churches are thinking about what they do, if you were to say maybe a level 1 context would be a high spiritual environment and a low social environment. So for example, like what we're doing right here. This doesn't have a lot of relational context to it. It's not very social. You're willing to watch videos and do homework and jump on a video call, do all these different kinds of things. That isn't exactly, really connected and social. This is you choosing something for your own spiritual development. So this would be like a level 1 type of thing. And if you imagine a level 2 type of thing, maybe it's somewhat social, somewhat spiritual. That might even be small groups, different kinds of things that have a social component that's equally mixed with a spiritual kind of growth component. And then if you imagine a level 3 thing, which is low spiritual, maybe there's no real spiritual content other than the people there are all people trying to follow Jesus, and it's highly social in nature. Okay? So that's a level 3 event. If I asked you, how do you think most churches program their time and their energy? What you'd realize is in most churches that the majority of the events are level 1 events, right? So at the top of the kind of chart, there are tons and tons and tons of events that are big events that have a high spiritual content. Maybe there's lots of teaching. And they have maybe a few level 2 events and maybe hardly any level 3 events. Like it's all like maybe once a year they do the barbecue or the picnic that they invite everyone to. And what that means is that the doorway into the church is level 3 kinds of things. The doorway into the church are things that people don't have to show up different. They can be involved socially. You see this in the ministry of Jesus. There was tons of parties and all kinds of ways he hung out with people that allowed people to get near him without it being sort of a religious or spiritual context. And then if you look at level 2 events, man, a lot of churches don't have any of those. Things that allow people to transition towards Jesus while it's still having some spiritual content. For us and for many churches, it's things like Alpha, or even creating a social circle where maybe we'll pray together for a moment, or we'll talk about something very briefly in our life with God, but really we're going to hang out and have fun and play a game or go hiking or whatever. But maybe even some other level 2 things would be like a date night where we give something for people to think about, and we invite them to the church to drop off their kids so they can kind of look around the building. We give them some things to think about their marriage, but they still go out on a date. And then level 1 things where it's like, okay, normal church kind of stuff where we talk about Jesus and prayer, and we maybe even ask for people to have encounters with God by the power of His Spirit in worship and in ministry. Most churches have tons of level 1 things, no level 2 things, and maybe 1 or 2 level 3 things. As a church, our commitment is to keep trying to program our church in a way that we have a wide front door where people can engage one another socially and enjoy being together and invite friends into those contexts, then create a bunch of level 2 types of experiences where we're going to maybe pray a little bit, but it's really still going to be mostly social. It'll be half and half. We'll do a benefit concert where they can have some fun, but they also hear about the justice of God and God's heart for people. And then level 1 things, of course, we're just going to do those pretty naturally as a church. As a church grows and gets bigger, and even as we grow in our life with God, what we tend to do is just move everything towards highly spiritual kind of context, and we forget about people who don't have any life with God and how difficult it is for them to make that jump all the way from their normal life into a context where you're talking directly about God and worshiping and doing the different kinds of things that we do because we love Jesus, that they don't love yet because they don't even know who He is. They've not been given the opportunity to belong before they believe. And so I just want you to hear our heart as a church, and this week have some questions for you to consider by way of the events and the things we're trying to build as a church. What it would look like for you to participate in those and bring people along, and maybe even as you lead in the context of our church, to help us create more environments like that